everybody, welcome back for another Sewcialites 3 block tutorial. We are on block number 7. It's called the flower block. This one is designed by Elizabeth Hartman. We're going to jump right in today. I'll be making the 9-inch block on camera. I already made the 6-inch block off camera. I'll show you that at the end. The reason I made that ahead of time is I wanted to try the tool that I purchased to check my seam allowance and try sewing with it and see if it made a difference. It actually didn't. My block still ended up short, and I'll show you that at the end. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the tool really quick, and then we'll start sewing. What I bought to try is this Seam Guide ruler by Madame Sew. I've used some of their products before. I was always really pleased with them. It also came with this little magnetic guide. Let me go ahead and show it to you. This is the ruler that comes with it. I'll bring it up to the camera. You can see it's got little holes drilled into it, and I'll show you how to use this on the Featherweight. We'll go ahead and double check and measure the seam allowance. It has a little cross in the corner here, so if you're drawing on your fabric and you want to draw the 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch and have your little pivot point marked, I thought that was really unique. What you do with it is you put the ruler under your presser foot, you needle down, and then you line up the magnetic guide next to it to help you sew. Here's the magnetic guide. And I did already try this on my Juki, and what I found was my 1/4 inch guide foot was a 1/4 inch. I went ahead and tried sewing with this, but I found it a little bulky. It may have been where I placed it. I might need some practice with it. This is a very, very strong magnet. So if you buy one of these, you put it down like this and you sew this way. This little ledge here is going to help you lift it and get it off your machine. It's a really strong magnet. I'll be sewing the 9-inch block today with fabrics by Laundry Basket Quilts, the Little Sweetheart line and the Cloud 9 fabric line. At the end, I'll show you my 6-inch block, which I'm sewing with Sherri and Chelsi's Strawberry Lemonade fabric line. You can see I already have everything cut. I went ahead and did that off camera because all it is squares and rectangles. No complicated cuts this week. I have everything marked. I still haven't found my letter B, so I have an 8 there. If you look through the instruction, you can see that we're going to need some lines on the back of our fabric B squares for that step right there, and then again for this step right here. So all of our fabric B squares, we need to draw a line corner to corner, unless you've got a laser or you're using diagonal seam tape. I don't have a laser on the Featherweight, and I don't want to put the tape on the Featherweight, so I'm going to go ahead and draw all the lines on the back of my squares. I'll do that off camera. I've shown how to do that before, and then we'll sit down and start at the sewing machine. I'm sewing on a 1955 Singer 221 Featherweight. Let's try this ruler and measure the seam allowance. I'm going to turn on the light on the sewing machine. What you want to do, raise your presser foot. I'm going to get that out of the way. And you need to find the 1/4 inch hole. So there's 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to go ahead and leave that presser foot on. That's my guide foot. I want to see if it's accurate. I'm needling down. Needle is down into that 1/4 inch hole. I'm going to lower the presser foot, and I'm looking where the guide is. Now, did you see that, how that moved a little bit when I pushed it? So if I'm working and I'm sewing and I kind of move it with the fabric like that, my seam allowance is going to be off. This has a little give in it. I may not have it screwed on tight enough. It's just a thumb screw. You can't use a screwdriver. So it seems like I've probably bent this out, coming out this way just a little bit. That may be affecting my seam allowance. It's very slight. I don't feel like I need to take this off and put the magnetic guide on. I will show that to you though. If you don't have a guide foot, something like this could be really helpful. This is a really strong magnet. I'm going to be very careful. What you would do is set it down and bump it right up against the ruler. Put it on the needle plate. I wouldn't want to put it here and scratch the bed of my machine. You really need to pull that to get that off. It is helpful in general just to check on my guide foot and realize that maybe I'm pushing this out a little bit when I sew, but it's so slight. To me, it's not worth taking the guide foot off. I'm going to continue to sew with my 1/4 inch guide foot. We're going to start right here. We're going to sew our fabric E's to fabric C, and then we'll press toward the center, and then we'll sew that to our fabric D, and I'll measure it. Since I'm doing the 9-inch blocks, it should measure 3.5 by 6.5. We'll see how that turns out. Again, 1/4 inch seam allowance for everything. Press toward the center here, and then it has us pressing down here. That's my fabric C and fabric E. I'm going to go ahead and take the extra time to pin this. When I sewed the 6-inch block, I pinned some parts and not some other parts, and it came out a little short, so we'll add some pins. You can pin both sides at the same time. So fabric C in the center and fabric E on the sides. There's one side, and we'll do the second side, and then you can sew down one side and flip it around and sew down the other. And you can also kind of check and make sure you've got everything on straight. Here's our fabric C and fabric E units. We want to put that right sides together with our fabric D. I definitely want to pin this. I want to make sure it's nice and straight. All pinned and ready to sew. Once you have that seam sewn, it does show pressing down toward our fabric D. Go ahead and press that and then measure it. I'm going to press it and measure it. Mine should measure 3.5 by 6.5. I measured it. It looks good. It looks like a hair short, but this one came out much better than my 6-inch block. When I measured my 6-inch block, which I didn't pin, everything was crooked, and that's probably why. The next thing we want to do is set this aside. Grab your fabric F. Here's my fabric F. 2 of your fabric B's, and you should have lines drawn on the back. So here's the back side of my fabric B. In this corner, I'm going to put one here with the line going from the top corner down this direction. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in that. And then on the other side, our line is going to go from the top corner down in that direction. Put that there and pin. We're making kind of like a bowl shape. It's going to be the bottom of the flower. I've got that pinned, ready to go. I really should switch the foot, but I was up all night with one of our dogs and I'm really tired, so I'm just gonna leave it today. And we'll go ahead and sew right on that line. Let's have a look at this before we cut the corners off. And if anyone is concerned, don't worry, the dog is okay. She's just deaf-blind and has dementia, and sometimes she has a bad night, and I have to sit up with her until she's calm and ready to go to bed. I'm just going to fold this and look nice and straight. You see that? That came out good. So I'm good to cut this off. And remember, 1/4 inch away from your stitch line, not on your stitch line. Let's go to this side. That also looks good. I did a decent job on that. I'm sitting right here at the table. You can use scissors. This doesn't have to be exact. About 1/4 inch away. It's a small enough piece that I'm comfortable using my scissors, and you can see it's not straight, but it's straight enough. It's going to be pressed over. You're never going to see it. It'll be fine. And then we're going to take this over to the iron. Going to press that direction. I've got this pressed. If you're doing the 9-inch block like I am, it should measure 2 by 9.5. This is spot on. Really pleased. Again, when I did the other block, the smaller one, it came out short, but I wasn't pinning. Here's your measurements for the 3, the 6, and the 9-inch block. Let's go to the next step. Go ahead and grab this piece, the piece that we started with, and then you need your fabric G's. You might see a theme here. I kind of went polka dot today. I wasn't sure what to pick for this since I'm only working with reds, pinks, whites, and creams. Fabric G's are going to go on the side, right sides together. I'm going to add pins, and then I'll sew with a 1/4 inch seam. And then once you have that sewn, you want to press that out. I thought I'd show this. You see how this side is slightly higher and this side is slightly shorter? I'm going to line up with the side that's slightly higher. You can do that by turning your piece over and definitely pin. I want to make sure my block doesn't come out crooked. So we'll line up there and we'll go ahead and pin. That's the canary today. And it looks like it may even be a the slightest bit short on this side. Yep, a little bit, but that's okay. I can actually give it a little bit of a pull because my fabric is starched, but not starched to the point of complete and total paper-like stiffness, so it's got a little bit of movement left. And we'll add a pin at the top. I'm going to flip it over and look again from the front. Just make sure it looks like it's straight. We can kind of line it up with our cutting mat. Looks straight. I'm going to go ahead and sew my 2 seams. I've got that piece sewn together, and you want to take this piece here, line it up like that. So you've got a U. Don't do this. It'll look weird. You'll know right away if you sewed it on wrong. So you want it like that. Make that U the bottom of the flower. Put your right sides together. I'm going to go ahead and pin, and then I'll sew with a 1/4 inch seam. Let's pin this one together because I want to show you something. I think I've showed it in a previous video, but just in case I haven't, I want to show it. When I pin the corner, I want to line up both sides. I want to make sure it's straight on the outside as well. I'm actually going to add an extra pin right there. I'm not sewing there, but I just want to make sure that that's nice and straight, and then I'll go ahead and go down the row. I'm ready to sew my seam. I've got that sewn. It looks correct. It has us pressing it up like that. I'll go press it at the ironing board, and then it should measure 5 by 9.5. This came out great. Let's go on to the next step. You're going to need fabric H and then 2 of your fabric B's. Here's your fabric H. This fabric B is going to go in this corner. So upper right, the line is going to go from the top left corner to the lower right corner of that fabric B square. I'm going to put in the pin. And then I'm just going to turn it because it's going to go the same way. So line it up there in the upper right hand corner. My line is going from left down to right. Add a pin. And then we're going to grab our next fabric H and 2 fabric B's. I'll leave that one right there. You can still kind of see it. Here's my fabric H, which clearly I needed to iron. Instead of putting the fabric B up here in the right corner, this time it goes in the left corner. We're making our leaves, so they're going to be mirror images of each other. So place this fabric B upper left, and then your line is going top right, lower left of your fabric B square. Pin that, flip it over, same thing, fabric B, upper left. Make sure you're nice and lined up, and that your line is going top right, lower left. Add your pin, and before you even sew anything, you can put them next to each other and visualize the leaves and make sure you've got it correct. Here's one, here's the other. So these are going to go this way, like that. They're mirror images of each other. These look good. We want to go ahead and sew on the lines. And I'm going to leave that guide foot again. I really should take the guide foot off for this, but again, tired. You can do the same thing with these before you cut them. This one's a little crooked. I'm leaving it. This one looks pretty crooked. Let's see if I can work with it. Yeah, it'll be okay. I just really don't get hung up with it. If it was like, if they're coming out like this, where you're just not matching up at all, I would definitely seam rip. But the little tiny little bits off, I'm okay with. If you're not okay with it, seam rip and redo it, but I'm okay with it. Looks good. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to grab my scissors, and I do have bigger scissors, but these are in front of me. So we'll go ahead and cut these, and then I'll take them over to the ironing board, and we're going to press them the same direction as the other ones. We're going to press them like that. If you're making the 9-inch, these should measure 3.5 by 4.5. So after you trim and press, you can go measure and see how they came out. Despite being a little crooked, they came out pretty good. That's what I trimmed off of one of the blocks. The next thing we want to do is grab fabric A. You should have 2 fabric A's. Lay down your leaves so they look like this. This is what they're going to look like when they go in your block. Got your fabric A. Fabric A. I want to place them like that and pin. And I'm going to pin both, but before I move one away, I'm just going to stick a pin in it so I don't accidentally move the fabric A to the wrong spot. And then fabric A for this one. So pin and sew your 1/4 inch seams. These are sewn. Do you see this? It's got a cut in it. I was lucky though. I've got space between where I sewed and where the cut starts. That happens sometimes and I don't notice until I go to sew things together. You want to go ahead and press up toward your fabric A. We don't have a unit measurement for that, but we're going to attach these to fabric I so we'll know if they're not the right size. We want to take our fabric I, which in the pattern they do show that as a different color than the fabric H's. I just made mine all one color and I did the same thing on my 6-inch block. So my fabric I matches my fabric H. I is going to go in the middle. One of these goes on this side and one goes on this side. Go ahead and pin and sew. Looks good. Now make sure you put your other leaf on right. Don't do that. Don't do that. That looks good. You should have your fabric A's up here at the top. Here's my pinning for this one. I went ahead and made sure I got this straight, added extra pins down here and up here. And right here you can see some of the brown because this part of the white is a little crooked. It kind of goes in this way. So I wanted to make sure I have this going straight. I'm ready to sew my 1/4 inch seam. I had a surprise when I measured this. All sorts of fun stuff going on today. This should be 5 by 9.5. It's a little bit under 5. Here's 9.5. This is 9 and about 3/4. So I must have cut something wrong when I cut for my block. My guess is my fabric I might be off. So let's look at our fabric I. It should be 2 by 5 inches. No, it's 2. It's 2 by 5. Okay, so my sewing is off somewhere. That's okay. Better bigger than smaller. So what I can do, since this is clearly bigger than 9.5, here, let me flip that around again. This has the 1/2 inch markings. So you line that up here. Here's 9.5. My block ends over here. Let's get the top part of our block and lay that down and let's measure the top part, which I think was spot on. It is spot on. That is exactly where it needs to be. So what I'm going to do is fold this in half. Make sure I know where the center is. There's the center. Line up the center with the center of the stem, that piece I. I need to pin that. I had to go grab my pins. Let's make sure that's in the center. And we'll go ahead and pin that. And then I'm going to pin the rest, and you'll see I'll have a little bit extra on this side and a little bit extra on that side, which is fine. I can trim that off at the end. Not worried at all about that. So go ahead and pin your block, sew your final seam, and then we'll press it and we'll measure it. After you sew that final seam, you press it toward the top. Here's my block. You see the extra here and here. That's fine because we can trim it down. This is supposed to be 9.5 inches square. I'm going to go ahead and grab my square ruler. I'm going to spin this toward me, and I want it to be 9.5 based off the short part. So let's measure the short part. It's actually 9.5 inches. I did a really good job. So then what I want to do is just even up. Yeah, look at that. That's amazing. It's crooked across the top though, but that's okay. What I want to do is even up the ruler with this part right here. Make sure it's straight over here. We're going to cut the extra here, like that. And then I'll go ahead and turn it. Get my 9.5 along the edge where I just trimmed. And you can see I've got a 9.5 there and here. That the top of the block, it's 9.5 here, here, here. Here it kind of goes down, and here it comes back up. So not bad. We'll cut that. It's also not perfectly straight across the bottom. I can see it's short here, and it's correct there. So there's a couple spots where it's not exactly perfect. That's kind of been the theme of this sew along for me, but that's okay. When I go to put this in the quilt, I'm actually going to see that. You can tell that that's a little short. That's easy to see. And the same up here. I could even it off, but then it's going to make it more rectangle than square, so I don't want to do that. Let me show you my 6-inch block and explain what I did to compensate for the wrong sizes on these two pieces. So here's the 6-inch block. So it's 6.5 inches until you sew it in your quilt. Here's a 6.5-inch ruler. If I put the ruler down on it, you can see it's a little bit short, and that's a little bit short. It was really short. Let me show you on the back what I had to do. These two pieces, this piece and this piece, were both really short. This way, not so bad. So when I sewed it together, I originally tried a 1/4-inch seam, and that made the block really squatty and rectangle. So I ripped that out, and I sewed with a really tiny seam allowance. Do you see that? It's about 1/8 of an inch. That was enough to make this end up more as a square and less as a rectangle. So overall, this block is a little small. All of my blocks have been a little small, so that's going to be okay. I love the way they turned out. I really like having the leaf and the stem the same color. I think that works for me. You'll see it looks like the block looks kind of weird here and here, but remember that's your 1/4-inch seam allowance, so when you're sewing these together, it's going to look like that when it's sewn in the quilt. You can double check that if you want with a ruler and say, do I have a 1/4-inch? I have a 1/4-inch there. I have a 1/4-inch there. This will be fine. And that looks fine. I hope you've enjoyed making the Sewcialites block number 7, the flower block, with me. I'll be back again next week. I do my best to sew these on Friday and get the video up by Saturday. If things get a little crazy around the house with the animals, the video might not come up until Sunday. Any comments or questions, please leave them below the video. Let me know how your blocks turn out. If you're interested in joining my Facebook group, there'll be a link for that below the video as well. You can share your blocks with the group, and I'd love to know if any of you have any Elizabeth Hartman quilts you'd like to work on. I have a few, and I'm thinking maybe when Sewcialites 3 ends, of working on one of the Elizabeth Hartman quilts. If there's anybody who's interested in that, definitely leave me a comment below. Thank you for sewing with me today. I'll see you next time.